Hey, it's Kek, the Spider-Gwen of Earth 19F3. Hope you're all doing okay. I'm sat here in my bunker cave in the aftermath of Storm Bela Lugosi. Outside, South Somerset's a bat-shredded hellscape, reminiscent of Orson Welles' staging of Macbeth. Well, that's South Somerset for you. You know, gotta love it. Last time we were here, I threw around some 50-cent words like brevity, but was I bruv? No, I wasn't. I waffled on, and as a result, my Tudor computer here started smoking and overheating. So this time I really will have to be brev. So we're going to crack on with a few questions that people ask me on Twitter. And the first one is from LRG Carter, who asked if there'd be any more collections of the Order. Well, I really hope so. I have to say I really love the Order. I'm very proud of what John and I have done there. We created something from fresh cloth, I feel. It's something that's very close to my heart. There's a trade out, a softback, which collects the first two series of the Order. I'm hoping they do more. I guess the answer to that is maybe the first one didn't sell as many copies as Rebellion would have liked, as I would have liked. So if you, it's a bit gauche of me to say this, but if perhaps Volume 1 sold a few more copies, then maybe they'll do a Volume 2. So I would recommend anybody that's into heroic fantasy, Lovecraftian worms, Aztec, Elizabethan women on motorbikes, Tudor motorbikes that go with Tudor computers, old dudes with bazookas. If you're into D&D, game playing, strange time travel stuff, then I think you'll love the Order. It's out there on the net, and maybe I'll be really crass and advertise it somewhere. Maybe on a link to this YouTube. I guess if they sell a few more, they might do a Volume 2. There's a really lovely German hardback edition of it out at the moment of Volume 1, and I believe they're doing more next year in German. No use to you if you're English speaking and you don't have access to a German dictionary, but it is a gorgeous thing. It's nearly the size of a treasure edition. It's huge hardback. John's artwork looks stunning in it. But yeah, hopefully there'll be some more. LRG asked me another question and said, basically, I want to ask you about your entire writing process, but obviously that's not feasible. And I wholeheartedly get behind that question, and hopefully in a minute, in a little bit further into this video, we'll talk a little bit more about process and stuff. I do love talking about process. It can be a little bit dry for people that aren't into writing stuff, but I'll try and put a few things later in this video about how I approach things, and maybe some tips and ideas. Not saying how, I mean, every writer's got different methods of doing things. I switch things up, switch things around quite a bit, but maybe there'll be some useful info in that, so I'll try and get to that in a later question, LRG. I hope that answers your first one. What I'm going to attempt to do now is a bit of cinema magic as I reach out into the offstage area and pull the next question in. George Méliès, eat your heart out. What a remarkable special effect that was. Next question is by Rob Briggs, who asks who my favourite artists and writers are to work with, and what aspects of those collaborations work best, do I think. Well, in terms of favourite artists, total cop out, but they're all my favourites. I mean, I'm I'm very, very lucky and privileged to work with some incredible collaborators in recent years. Anybody that's seen my work in 2000 AD, I'm blessed with a caliber of artists that I could never have dreamt with, that I would have been working with when I was younger. There's some amazing people. So I wouldn't want to play favourites with anybody. I mean, Dave and Lee, I know socially, you know, I sort of go out for a beer with Dave occasionally, so you know, we can chat stuff over and things like that. But a lot of the artists I work with, we collaborate by email. We talk to each other, so we're able to sort of discuss stuff, or I can send them character notes. It's pretty good when you can work on that sort of closer level, as it were. It gives you a chance to kind of bounce things around. But also, some of the guys I work with have been assigned to me by an editor, so I might not know who they are until the work's underway. Or so basically, they might just get a script from me via the editor. And start working on it, but generally, even those guys, we have some sort of communication at some point. We mail one another. I'm always available for questions and clarifications. More recently, I've been doing some kind of creator-owned things, working on a bunch of stuff, some of which is out there at the moment, some not. Those again, they're probably a little bit more tighter, a bit like working with Dave or Lee, in as much as there's a lot of emails flying around. You're trying to get to know each other as people, get a measure of your collaborator, what they're into, what they like, the sort of the sort of thing they'd like to do, and if you can get on the same wavelength as them, then maybe the work goes up a notch. It's you know, it's something that you're both enjoying doing. I mean, that's something I try and do. It is, if I'm able to, I try and play to the strengths of the artist, or get to know the artist at least to the degree where I know what they like doing and what their interests are. I mean, David Roach, who I did Saphir with, there was a lot of emails bouncing around between the two of us before we even pitched the idea, and we kind of built a collaborative Venn diagram. That's a Venn diagram. See, I know what I'm talking about. Where we found this overlap area between our interests, our artistic interests, the visual stuff we liked, the kind of stories we wanted to tell. And so we had a firm groundwork there, because we knew we both kind of liked this area of stuff, and I think that kind of made the process really smooth. So where possible, where I know who I'm going to be working with, I try and get to know them, find what the common ground is, and play to the artist's strength. You know, find the sort of things that they like doing, and work along those lines, and I think it just makes for a better collaboration. In terms of letterers, I was going to say, because I've worked for 2000 AD under various publishers for quite some time now, so I've been blessed to work with people like the late great Ellie Deville, who was amazing, and Annie Parkhouse, and more recently, you know, really talented letterers like Jim Campbell, Simon Bolan. They're amazing talents. So again, I'm very lucky with the level of art, level of letterers I get to work with, as well as the artists. Do I have a favourite? Again, I hate to play favourites, you know, because these are amazing people, and they all bring different things to the table according to the work that you're doing. I gotta say, I do really love Annie Parkhouse's lettering. I mean, we're working with Annie. Connor Boyle, the artist on The Screaming Hand, which is a create our own thing we're doing, Connor and I are working with Annie. She's our go-to gal letterer for the Screaming Hand, which is a deliberately retro strip. It's got a late 70s feel, British comics feel to it. Annie likes doing retro stuff. We like doing retro stuff. And she's absolutely amazing in what she brings to the table on that. I mean, I worked with her at 2000 AD Rebellion, but there's incredible craft there. I mean, she's mailed me a couple of times about double bolding things, and I mean, I'm learning from her all the time, and it blows my mind. I only found this out a few weeks ago. I believe she was the letterer on Alan Moore's Marvel Man in Warrior, so what's that, early mid 80s. So again, it kind of blows my mind to think, God, I'm working with people like Annie Parkhouse and then John Burns, but I work with some amazing people, and I'm incredibly grateful, to be able to collaborate with these people. They're all amazing, and they all bring different things to the table. Next question is from Matthew Coman, who asks, what was it like pitching for your first professional gig? Was it nerve-wracking? Did you have to psych yourself up for it, etc., etc.? Things are falling over in my office beside me, so strange sounds you may hear over there. The weird thing is, it actually, the first one wasn't too bad, but it was really easy. I mean, I was corresponding with an artist at the time. They were looking for work at 2000 AD. We were playing around with some ideas anyway. I suggested something, and the artist actually pitched the thing, so I didn't have to make the nerve-wracking phone call. They then, I think, wrote me a letter saying, yeah, this is good, write the script. So my first experience wasn't too painful, though weirdly prior to that I'd worked in the small press, and some of my experience with a couple of small press editors wasn't great. They were quite difficult to work with, shall we say. So the first professional gig was quite smooth. I had Alan Mackenzie as my editor, and he was a really nice guy. He kind of mentored me in my very early days, pointed out all my newbie mistakes, and kind of started nudging me in the right direction. So yeah, it wasn't too nerve-wracking. I mean, a little bit later on I got a series, and I had to phone the artist up, and anecdote time. I'd gone from sort of, Alan was a decent professional, easy to work with guy, and then I phoned this artist up who started screaming and swearing at me down the phone. So actually I was lulled into a false sense of security, thinking everybody was going to be nice and easy. So that was not much fun, shall we say, and then that kind of puts you on edge, because you kind of wonder what your next professional interaction is going to be like. These days, obviously, that was about 25 years ago. You don't get that sort of behaviour so much these days, thank God. But yeah, occasionally I have to phone people up. You kind of get a little bit. You can get a little bit psyched, a little bit nervous. I don't envy any of you guys out there at the moment. I mean, I know there's this thing at Thought Bubble now, isn't it? People go and pitch a Future Shock, and you have to stand up in front of a panel of editors and other writers, and people looking on, and you've got a minute or two to pitch your Future Shock, and then the one that gets picked you get to script it and run it in the comic, etc. I mean, honestly, if I had to start my career with standing up pitching in front of a load of people, even on Zoom, I mean, I don't think things would have happened for me, to be honest. It's a little bit like I mean, I get why you do this. It makes life easier for, say, editorial. They don't have to look through hundreds of scripts or outlines in a slush pile just to find one or two decent ones. It means in half an hour they can find some new talent, and that's great. It makes life easier, speeds up the process. But it's a bit like if you're taking an exam and you're being assessed on your ability to stand up and do a lecture or something. Some people just aren't good at that, some of us like to sit away in the type away in the corner in the dark, and maybe kind of standing up in front of an audience to get your story idea heard is not an ideal way to break into the business. I mean, I've never had to go into the boardroom at Warner Brothers and pitch a film idea, so maybe it helps you do something like that, sort of gives you some public speaking talent or something, but it's not my cup of tea, and I imagine a lot of people would find that hair-raising, so I'm kind of grateful I've never had to go through that process. Back in my day, it was letters and phone calls. Mark Olivan asks if there's a strict storytelling process that I always adhere to, or whether my process is a little bit looser. I guess, Mark, you mean about generating stories and the way a story's pulled together and made into a script. There's a lot of different ways of doing this, and I don't necessarily always do the same thing. Just to, I think I said earlier, I kind of move things around a bit, sort of mess things up, mix and match things. Sometimes a small thing might trigger it, so say a title of a story or a thumbnail one-liner or a paragraph. I think I alluded to before, they're down here somewhere, various pitch books. Oh my god, everything's falling apart here. Here's one, for example, full of stuff. So I scribble down various ideas, and the antivirus thing is just loaded, so I just need to shut down. Yeah, so I scribble down various ideas in different books according to genre or type or whatever, and I pull those out. If I need a western or a war story or a superhero thing, I go digging through years worth of books. Some of the stuff I do for 2000 AD, there might be one book just dedicated to it. Somewhere in this pile down here, I've got one that's just Indigo Prime stuff. So it's just full of story ideas for Indigo Prime, including the timeline I generated a couple of years ago that would create 25 to 30 years worth of stories. They're all kind of thumbnail one-line things, but each one would potentially generate a series, and I figured out there was 25 to 30 years worth of storylines in that. So yeah, the starting point can be very, very, it can come from a number of different places. It might be something I've misheard in a conversation, something I dreamt, something I scribbled down 10 minutes ago or 20 years ago, because I keep all this stuff. So the initial spark can come from a variety of places. Now, how I storify that, again, sometimes, if I'm working with prose short stories, then I'm sat down hacking away at a blank page on Open Office or something like that, like pulling words in until I get a shape of something, or I, so I'm basically writing a story straight off out of the air. If it's for a series or a one-off, then I'm likely to write an outline for it. I may break that down into episodes if it's a multi-episode thing. With where Matt Smith is concerned, Target 2000 AD, When I'm sending in outlines of episodes, I've moved in the last year or two to actually going down to page level, so I'm almost laying out the pages. Sometimes Matt say, no, I don't like this, or change that. But quite often when it works, it means I've already started putting the the bricks in place to build the wall of that episode or that script. It may change when I go from outline to script. Obviously things get refined, you come up with better dialogue ideas, yada yada, but that's one way I do it. Occasionally I use flashcards, and I've got some examples here. I don't do that all the time. I did it with the last series of Dead World, the fourth series, Doomed, and I also did it with the last series of The Order. Now I didn't necessarily lay the whole story out using flashcards, but I did use it to sort of create an outline, or no, not an outline, more of a roadmap. So each flashcard might represent a point in the road of the story. So it was a good way of kind of just putting my thoughts down on little squares of card in this case, and then laying them down and seeing if I could see the outline of story there, or if it made sense from a narrative point of view. Somewhere on my camera I've got a photograph from, I don't know, I guess it must have been this time, maybe a couple of years ago, when I was writing that series of, or trying to map out that series of Dead World. I put down all these flashcards, and it created kind of an inverted tree structure of possible storylines that would come out of it. I think I mapped out stuff that ended up being about the first 3 or 4 episodes were done with flashcards. Just kind of really simple things. I'll give you an example in a minute. But yeah, they went all across the kitchen floor, and that was only about 3 episodes. As it happened, I didn't really use that process to do the rest of the story, but it was a good way of starting and saying what are the basic story elements I'm going to have in this series. In fact, a few days ago I found some of the flashcards for that series of Dead World. I don't know if you can see them in the dark, but I'll put 1 or 2 of them up. I don't know if you can read that. It just says Mortis in space, introduce Russians. The Mortis in space thing is I think how we actually started that series, and that goes back to a conversation that Dave Kendall and I had years ago, 2-3 years ago. We went out for an Indian in Newcastle, and we were talking about this idea of Mortis being in an airlock, and when it depressurizes, it blows all the skin off of him. So that's how you get from the sort of late human incarnation of Mortis through to the sort of bone-faced bogeyman that we all know and love. So that was something Dave and I actually chatted over a curry and a pint, and said, wouldn't it be cool if we could do that? But it took about a year or more before I actually reached the point where that went into the storyline. So yeah, the first flashcard was, I remembered that, and I thought, hey, let's start off with Mortis in space. And also we were talking about the Apocalypse War on Dead World, so introduce the Russians, or the Sovs as they were. Here's the second flashcard that I would have laid out on my kitchen floor. That one says, even I can't read it, Mortis and Casey. So I wanted to have a scene between Judge Mortis, who's in space, just taken over a space station, and Casey Tweed, who's now the chief judge of Dead World. He's deposed Judge Death at the point in the timeline that we're at. So I thought it would be fun to have a confrontation scene or an interaction between Mortis and Casey. We can show how different they are. Mortis is this uptight, dead-faced acolyte of Judge Death, this sort of bone-faced geezer, whereas Casey is the younger upstart, and he's smoking dead fluids like it's going out of fashion, and he's so there's a generational divide. You've got like kind of almost like a old dad, granddad, Uncle Fester dark judge meets the current one, and of course Mortis is loyal to Judge Death, and wait a minute, there's this young asshole who's now in charge of things. So I thought it'd be funny to mix it up and have maybe a conversation where, you know, you see that there's two different factions there in Justice Department, and it's also it adds a little bit of humour and levity, but it also tells us a little bit about who the characters are, you know, what their place in the great game is. Having a look here, oh yeah, there's that was a smaller one. I chopped it into 2 or 3 bits. It says Jess, so I wanted to have a scene with Jess and Fairfax that might include Arthur, Jess's boyfriend from the Cursed Earth area. You know, that the two of them have a moment, you know, because in the first couple of series we built this weird relationship between the two of them, so I wanted an emotional beat in there where she gives him his helmet, because she's been wearing the helmet, she's been the judge, the adult, she comes to the city to rescue him, and she hands the helmet back to him and forces him to face up to his own responsibility as a judge. So I wanted to have a beat where she's saying, you know, you've got to be the grown-up, you know, you've got to be the judge that you've never been before. And basically these flashcards go on like this. I was looking through some of them earlier, and there's ones here I didn't use, so I've got to be careful about what I do and don't show you, because some of these may turn up in a future series. But occasionally, sorry if I just look down and just read this, I like to go to broader strokes. So there were some cards describing maybe emotional beats between characters, or little micro stories I wanted to tell in the bigger storyline. But then occasionally I like to throw in wild cards in these flashcards. Like there's one, it just says big explosions, because at some point I wanted to slot into the story some big explosions, so you might have some atomic bombs. I mean, the Russians are coming, it's the apocalypse war, so as a reminder to myself, let's have some you got the emotional stuff going on, but let's have some broader canvas, widescreen kabooms going on, you know, full page splashes, buildings falling down, yada yada yada. So that's a wild card. There are other wild cards, and I had one. I had a similar one when I did the last series of the Order, and in fact I found 2 in this deck. In fact, this kind of where we sort of ended the series. Someone dies. It's always like tarot cards. You slot these things in and out the deck. So somewhere in there I wanted another wild card that said at some point we should have maybe a shocking death. In this instance, shock horror, I've got Jess. You know, should we kill Jess as an idea? You know, does that service the story? Does it service the bigger timeline that Dave and I are trying to build here? But I think somewhere in here I've just got some more. Someone dies, but that was a specific Jess one. And yeah, I don't want to show you those because yeah, that's a generic someone dies. I don't want to show you some of these because I haven't used some of these ideas yet. I can't find it here because it's too dark at night. Somebody turn the light on. But there was another one that says Casey does something crazy, you know. Again, that's a good wild card thing. You know, he's supposed to be in charge of Justice Department, but he's off his head, starting to lose it, have hallucinations, etc., etc. So I think that's another way of derailing the story. Just once you get your comfy slippers on with something, it's nice to throw these little grenades into your own process and say, let's think outside the box. Let's throw a wild card, a joker at the story, see if we can shake a few things out of the tree. So yeah, flashcards are one way to go. I don't use them all the time or often, but they are very useful. I mean, a lot of the time there's just going to be notepads and me writing endless notes to myself. I quite often rough out lots of dialogue and scenes between characters. Quite often there's a couple times as much stuff that isn't used in a comic book strip as what actually makes the final cut. I sometimes rub characters up against one another, so I'll scratch out sort of if character C meets character Z, what's their personal agendas and how does that kind of map out in a conversation or an interaction or a fight or a scrap or whatever between those characters. And sometimes that produces really useful, valuable material, and it makes it into the final draft of the outline or the script. Sometimes it's just stuff, and then you don't end up using that scene. I mean, going back to the flashcards, I found one card, obviously something I didn't use. I completely forgot about it. That in my original take on that series, Judge Fire kills Judge Whisper. There's an interfaction scrap in Justice Department. That didn't happen in the end. I thought, maybe the good guys should, the Resistance should take down the horrible Judge Whisper rather than Judge Fire, and then I decided I wanted to use Judge Fire in a different way. Now that was a ramble. I just looking at the timer there, 15 minutes ramble. So I kind of hope that helps a little bit. I do different things for different series, different stories. There's different processes. Maybe we can talk about some of those other processes or elaborate on them in another video. I mean, drop me some comments on Twitter if you like, or on YouTube, and say, could you talk a bit more about blah blah blah, because I may have misunderstood your question, or I went so far off road it made it irrelevant. But I am happy to elucidate some of the sort of processes. As you can see, I could probably talk for hours about these things. They might be boring for some people, but some writers, people that want to write, are writing, might find it useful to sort of see how I do it. It's not how everybody does it, obviously, but yeah, flashcards are one way. And I think I'll pause this segment because I have wittered on again. So look, I've just realised I've overstayed my welcome once again, blathered on far too long, so I'm going to cut and run. One last thing, it's not a question, but somebody, my old friend Dom Zero sent me an email commenting on the first video. He says, nice stuff, it has a Kurt Russell, The Thing vibe to it, or an Apocalypse Survivor. Just a random thought, pretty sure you must have some cool stuff on that wall behind you. Maybe point a lamp at it, light up the background. So let's just see, maybe that's a bad idea. There seems to be some sort of devil bunny there. Perhaps we won't do that again. Or maybe I'll do an unboxing video where I unbox my office bunker thing or something. Anyway, he says maybe I should have some snow or ice on my beard. Well, whatever floats your boat, pal. Let's see if we can oblige. It's weird and it's pissed off. I put a little bit of flour into my beard to make it look like I was out in the snow, but it just made it look like I'd gone really grey. Anyway, thanks for all your questions and tuning in. Maybe we'll do another one.
Please stay with us. I thank you, but I must go. I am needed somewhere else. I don't know where or how. It is my destiny. Farewell. May your sun god give you all possible happiness in this valley.